Hi, I'm ED-SKaR, and today I will be painting a motorbike, but not this one. Recently I was rooting through my pile of opportunity, all those models that I haven't painted yet, and I found some orks. Even as a nominally ork player, I still have unpainted orks. In particular, I noticed some bikers that I'd swapped for at some point. These had been assembled by their previous owner, and just one little thing was niggling at me. One ork had two hands on the handlebars, and another had both hands with weapons raised. Now, you see, to control a bike properly, you need both hands on, but you can certainly take one hand off if you're going in a straight line for a moment. Thankfully for me, this model had been assembled with superglue, which I still think is the most ubiquitous case of false advertising that I can think of. These parts just crunch and break away with minimal effort. But I get the arms swapped, and I collect the chosen model into a few sub-assemblies, and I get started with a metallic dry brush. My wet palette has an assortment of paints from previous projects, and so I just mix some together to find some interesting colours. Some silver, some gold, some brown, some red. It all mixes nicely together to create a rusty, worn look. And once that's all done, I paint it red, cause you gotta paint it red. Red ones go faster. In previous videos, you've all seen me struggle with the red paint that I have. Thin and streaky. So today I thin it down to a glaze consistency and set about layering up to full opacity. There's also an old weathering trick that involves painting your metallics first and painting the middle of each panel or surface with your chosen colour, leaving the edges bare metal so that it appears the colour is chipped or worn away. In this case, the first glaze layer of red over the metallic dry brush came together to look so totally amazing. Nothing to do with any plan that I had thought up in advance, just a lucky combination of individually passable ideas. In fact, I was so happy with how it looked that I even took a turntable shot of just this before I continued painting. There is a big way that painting a model and riding a bike are totally different, and yet quite similar. I treat my bike like a tool. It gets me from place to place, but the journey itself is relaxing. Being in such direct physical control of a machine hurtling along lets me put everything else out of my mind. It's very focusing. Painting also has an end goal. In that case, it's having a finished painted model. And a lot of people get hung up on that end goal. It has to look perfect. It has to be the best. That they forget the journey. The process of painting is, by itself, an enjoyable one. Moving paint around and seeing the effect it has. Mixing colours and finding details. Picking out an edge or a highlight. This process can be focusing in itself. Lose yourself in the painting process and enjoy. And I quickly went through all of the details on the bike. I picked out a few leather details as well, like the seat and the wrap for the handle, although these won't nearly be as visible, particularly once the ork has sat down. And then there is this skull. Big, impressive, horned skull on the front. Now that is a cool thing, and I wish I could do that to my bike in some way that was considered safe. The classic way of doing bone, that being an off-white with a brown wash, is pretty effective and looks really nice. However, in this case, I wanted to try something different. Because a lot of the recesses are smooth rather than quite sharp, they might not take a wash all that well. And so instead of that, I did a layered highlight technique, starting with brown and then mixing more and more white into it. It maybe isn't perfect. The classic chalkiness of white is my excuse. With all that time spent on the bike, it's time to paint the biker. Straight away drawn to that cool jacket and skipping over the usual good advice of painting the most recessed areas first, which would have been the skin here. I tried to paint it black leather, which should have a strong, bright, pure white highlight. Coming off of my last video practicing some NMM, this should have been within my grasp, but I really didn't think about it quite right at the time, so I blitzed over it and ended up with a soft grey highlight instead. Still looks good, I think, but less like black leather and more like black canvas. Well, that's okay, I was never a fan of leather gear. It's sweaty and expensive and has a cult following. I much prefer more modern materials that protect as well or better and are far more comfortable to wear. Looks like this little orc has the same opinion as me. This biker has character and is a different sculpt to any I've painted before, but it's not that different. At the other end of a very long road, I was there when the 3rd edition orcs were released. Along that road I've learned these sculpts very well. Every foot, belt buckle, armor panel, bracelet and tooth. So whenever Games Workshop release a new orc, I already know which original part they've modified. So on this biker, I recognise the helmet, I know the feet. The arms are a little harder to place, but the torso and that jacket, well, I've never seen this piece before. And I appreciate that somehow. A totally new piece that fits in with all of the others. Overall, I didn't spend a whole lot of time on the orc. I didn't even fill the highlights on much of him. Just enough and it's done. Oh, Zog, I forgot the grot. So this bike has a flagpole with a grot hanging off. I nearly forgot to paint that. I spent even less time here than I did on the biker, although I did have to redo the skin. Usually I paint orc skin with dark green and light green highlights. Gretchen skin gets much the same, but pushing further into the lighter green. However, for some reason I base coated this one with the lighter green. I fixed this by glazing a darker green into the recesses and picking out some highlights with pink mixed in with the lighter green. I even managed to make all of the metallic pieces match the rest of the bike, thankfully. So with the grot finished, now it's done. Well, thank you all for watching, and special thanks today go to Darthwhite, who helped me out with the camera work for this video. No road is too long if you have good company. I'm ED-SKaR, and I always will be.